Welcome to the October 7th, are we?
17th.
Welcome to the October 17 meeting of the Board of Selectmen to discuss consideration of the redesign of the Main Street intersection. Before we get to that though, I just have one announcement. On Thursday, October 27th, in addition to the Halloween parade we have on the 28th, which is Friday night, the Berkshire Homeschoolers Association or something is having a march with 30 kids starting at 1:30 through downtown Main Street. And I just want to encourage everyone who's here, if you're around Main Street at that time, to come out and say hi to the kids. We'll be marching both Thursday and Friday. So now, without further ado, let's get to this meeting. We're going to follow the following procedures. Of course, when we get to the time to speak, only one will speak at a time. We're going to start off with a presentation from the VHB Design Group, which is the engineering firm. They ran into an overturned tractor trailer, so they're pulling in as we speak to their Springfield office where they're going to zoom in, and Michael's going to run the PowerPoint presentation. Let's have a civil discussion. We can have back and forth. I prefer with so many people on that all discussions go through the chair. There'll probably be some disagreements, but let's keep it civil as always. And at the end, we're going to do a straw poll to see what people who make it to the end think of the idea. So if other than that, Michael has a form. Yeah, Michael has a form which he's going to fill out now, which is also a little survey that you can fill out and leave before you go. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chuck to explain the history of the intersection because we have about 6 minutes to kill.
I don't want to say anything that's not right.
You can say anything you want. Opinion, just narrative. We just have 5 minutes, but yeah, we could just recess for 5 minutes if you prefer. It's up to you guys.
Rather, I really don't want to speak at
I
this
can
point.
show the.
Okay, all right.
Patrick, I can show the form in 1 second.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't want to say anything that's going to
You don't have to rush with those because we're still 4 minutes to kill. Yes.
We still have RTE.
be, it's, vegetation's going to stay out.
Pass down.
Place it's on constant.
Hello.
It's going to cause trouble.
That's the time that we send around.
Do you guys want to, once the presentation is done, would you prefer to have public input first or have a discussion with us first?
We have pens for at the end if people want to fill out their forms tonight, or you
The
can
public input.
fill out a form and drop it off here at Town Hall in my office.
Yeah.
We can put on what people
What?
are thinking
You're
about
not
the
answering their
presentation,
question, though.
which option they prefer.
Have a conversation as well, but it's not so much answers. Well, we don't know. It depends on what people say, I suppose.
Okay.
They might ask questions.
For those people at home, this is a project input form that we're going to ask people to give their opinion at the end of the presentation this evening. The people that are here, but people at home, if you want to stop down, we're going to have extra copies here at Town Hall that people can fill out and give us their input back. So we're trying to just get some feedback into people feel after the presentation. As Chairman stated, our consultants will be logging in shortly due to an accident on the Mass Pike that delayed traffic up to an hour. They're going to have to log in from their Springfield office. So we're playing a little delay game right now on this project. We'll stop the sharing right there. So, the project's been what, 5 years now, Chuck, in
Yeah, it's
existence?
been a while.
It's gone through a number of design phases, and now we're at one preferred phase that we'll be presenting tonight that the selectmen have, are gonna be moving toward the people, so.
Hi, Pat.
Regarding the form, could that be put as a PDF on the website?
It will be, yep,
Okay, so people can.
yep. I will have it posted on the website tomorrow so people can print it and then drop off copies or email it in.
And I will ask that, in this case, it doesn't matter, obviously, because we just repeated the question, but we should either repeat the questions if they come from the audience, or ask the audience to step up here, because anybody who's coming in from Zoom can't hear questions from the back of the room.
They gotta step up here.
Yes. What's that? Yeah, I know.
There's a question in the back.
Any,
Oh, yeah. Hey, Don.
Will the consultants be giving an overview of these three options?
Yes, in fact, they have a slide presentation we're going to load as soon as they come on. The question was, will the consultants be giving an overview? I believe that the consultants are going to focus though on the redesign that is being discussed tonight. The third option, I don't believe they'll be talking about the roundabout
they'll
option.
talk about why the roundabout was
Okay.
not considered as the primary option in their presentation.
And do we have a second screen of people?
What's that?
And Dan's not on it. Are we up to 2 screens?
I,
Yes, you are. This is Joe, CTSB. Yes, you are.
Okay. Hi, Joe.
yep, we got everybody showing on the screen there, so they have yet to log on.
All right. They said about 5:40, so it's 3 more minutes.
Yeah. And then they had to get logged in. That's when they were getting to their office. Then they're gonna log in and do the presentation. So we do apologize. I know our consultants were very apologetic. They thought they were leaving, giving themselves an hour extra about, and then they ended up with that.
Michael, the first few slides are just background overview. I think you could probably load those and start if you want. I mean, or would you rather we wait? I just feel we said we're starting at 5:30 and we should start when we say.
Let me just peek at the first couple of slides here.
Goals of tonight's meeting, you know.
All right, let me load the current slide show. All right, yeah, this is the one awkward part of having, we gotta think of.
We have to pivot
Other
the chairs, yes.
Display someday might be the right thing. So what I'm gonna do is just start with the first couple of slides, which just introduce it, so that when our consultants get on, they can see it. Yeah, if you want your chairs for the presentation.
Excellent.
So, I won't butcher Van's last name, but he will be on shortly, along with some other individuals from VHB Group, to go over our Main Street and South Pine Street intersection improvements. So, review the project history. The project started looking at the following 4 locations. As you can see from the slide, you can see the various in the yellow circles, which were the areas that they were looking at, which includes starting from the far right project area on the intersection to install a raised crosswalk here in front of Town Hall, to relocate the crosswalk located at Elm Street so that it actually doesn't exit into a driveway. And then removal of a crosswalk on Main Street that currently enters and exits into a active driveway, which we've now been told, both through our ABA study and through our engineers, is something that is not allowed by law. That you cannot have a crosswalk exiting into an active driveway. So we need to figure out what to do with that. And then, of course, the main focus will be tonight on which of the options for the intersection improvements. We have received funding to do the crosswalks on Elm and in front of Town Hall through a state grant. So we'll be proceeding with those 2, which seem to be not controversial subject matter. And then What's also happened to date is, I think as most people are aware, is we put the paint down to show where the areas would be condensed at the intersection. There's the middle area, which would be a raised mountable pavement, but would be something that you would go over that you'd feel in your car to get people. That includes a road diet where the road itself would narrow in order for traffic to go there. So that's been installed, been looked at, and then we're now in the public outreach phase before we take the concept to town meeting.
And Michael, just for clarification, shared streets is what he's referring to in terms of the grant for the crosswalks.
Yeah.
That was shared streets is a state, so the Commonwealth, grant making program was it through the Department of Transportation?
Yeah. Through Mass. So right now, that's the existing conditions of the downtown and the intersection. And one of the things that I know that has been brought up is that what we have in the intersection of Main Street is a lot of pavement. You can see by the amount, the size of cars in that area, how much actual pavement there is. Which tends to lead to faster cars and other things. That's why what you'll probably hear is a term referred to as a road diet, where the road gets narrowed so that people tend to drive a little slower, a little more cautious. So they've done the following, they've done, a planning traffic study. They reviewed the crash data. They performed field surveys. They've developed various concepts that were brought forward. They identified the preferred alternative, which will be the focus of tonight. They implemented the interim striping improvements. We've initiated the state highway coordination through what's called an access permit. And then now we'll move on to develop the final plans for the preferred alternative and then pursue a shared streets grant, which was already awarded. So that one we've already done. And if there's gonna be a point here where I will have to stop because really should be the engineers, but we can go over some more here. So in 2018 was the initial planning study. In 2019, town meeting approved the funding for preliminary design. In 2020, you received there was a public information meeting to discuss project concepts. In June of that year of 2020, interim striking plan was prepared and implemented so that people could see what it would look like actually on the ground. The project limits changed to adding the three crosswalks toward Town Hall. Then the preliminary design plans were provided to the town. We went after a shared street grant in 2022 and awarded for the three crosswalks. That's the Elm Street and the one in front of Town Hall. And then we're looking at the final designs. 90% would have been in August of this year, but right now they're on hold. So that before we spend the final design money, making sure that this is the design that we want to take next. So that's where we sit right now. So this is all the history of the concept
And one thing that isn't on there, we did have a walkthrough at one point.
all right.
We started at the firehouses and we walked a public meeting, walked all down the intersection with the people and went through everything.
When was that?
That was, I don't remember the date, but
A couple years
do a
ago,
walk, yeah.
right, at least three
It
then.
was probably good 3 years ago, maybe even
Okay.
4, but we did do a walkthrough too, which was part of this.
So when the design phase was first laid out in 2019, they wanted to avoid impacts to the monuments and fountains. And a roundabout concept was prepared without a survey so that they could look at the layout and the rest. 2020, the survey was completed, design was updated. The need to meet the current Mass DOT design standards, deflection of entering vehicles needed to be increased. The splitter island needed to be raised and projected to pedestrians, and to address design requirements and impacts in the layout would be realized. So, and this is where I think that we're gonna have to pause, and hopefully any moment now, we will be able to get our engineers on. But I know that this was the original schematic design for the Main Street roundabout. And I think everybody would say, yes, if we could design a roundabout to work that way, I think everybody would be in favor of it. But when they looked at the onloading, offloading and the rest, they ended up with this as what would have to be to meet the current design standards. And like I said, I will have the engineers follow up, because this includes road takings, property takings in front. The cat and dog fountain will be dramatically impacted on this one. And it's just the requirements of it, including numerous parking spots and the rest along the way. But like I said, this one's a little difficult for me to answer questions in that, because this is really our engineers who will be able to shed a little more light on this. And
Michael,
yeah,
why do we keep going over the roundabout? I thought that we had.
It's just background.
Completely, we're not gonna do that, so why do we waste time continuing to go and explain the roundabout?
they just were preparing a couple slides to remind people of why this concept was eliminated, in case people that are joining in tonight weren't sure why this was not the preferred option. So we just wanted to make sure those that have been following along, right, you've heard it a couple times of why this wasn't the preferred option.
Louise, you want?
Yeah, Michael, do you mind going back to the text slides again, this one?
Oops, sorry.
That's all right. So in the 2018, the first item, what is the et cetera? You've got monuments, mountains, and et cetera. What is et cetera?
Since I didn't lay this out, I'm not quite sure what, I think they're just referring to any historical area up there as far as, I would say like the parking, having the land take any.
Yeah, probably the takings.
Redlining.
The takings,
So-
it goes across Austin Rig.
Probably,
Part of
right.
it, et cetera.
Yeah, and impacts to the town-owned monuments and fountains.
And what is deflection on the bottom part? Deflection of entering vehicles, what is deflection?
So that's why you see in this next one, and I just know from discussion, see how the intersection's like pushed over? So that as you come into the intersection, that's deflection. So they can't just come and do a right turn when you're going into a rotary. The rotary has to be able to flow. So it creates that, you can see how the whole road gets shifted on this map and how it ends up cutting through properties and other stuff.
And I'll just remind folks that I don't have any problem with a more collegial discussion like this, but we have to repeat the questions. So if you have a question and you don't feel like coming up, then just give me a second. I'll repeat the question just to make sure that people on Zoom can hear it.
Hi, can you all hear me in the meeting right now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Nat Woodward. I live on East Main Street. I have a quick question. Could you describe in detail what mountable decorative pavement is?
You know, like if you're riding on the Mass Pike and you start to fall asleep and all of a sudden your car hits that really bump, 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 bump sound?
Yeah.
It's that.
Gotcha.
Cars get
Not that I've ever done that.
Have you been through the rotary in Barrington yet?
Oh, sure.
That's that bump that you ride over.
Yeah.
That's
Is that
what
the
it
thing
is.
that it's like a curb that the trucks can go up onto and not?
Yeah, that's mountable pavement.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
No problem. I've been through that several times and it works.
Yeah, me
It really does. Needed it, I don't know about that point, but it really works.
So I'm gonna continue along and then we'll have our engineers, just so we're not just
We call them, see where they're at.
sitting here.
And Michael, are you able to track both the hand raises and the?
Yes.
The slides up?
Yes.
Because we don't
I can see the
raises.
chats and I can see the hands up
Okay.
right now. And actually,
That's what they're
let
doing.
me run and
They're-
grab my phone and
They're this shortly then.
let me see if
Wait.
so we'll take a couple minute recess right here while I contact our our consultants and see where they are
All right.
right now, if that's all right with the chair.
Yep. 2-minute recess, which will.
Hello, Mike?
Hey, man.
We were on for a few minutes.
Oh, you're hiding on us. Letting us do the work.
And we just couldn't get, to get your attention. I apologize.
How we do, okay?
Yeah, I don't think you did too bad. Let me just, I'm trying to just make this a little bit louder here.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
Do you want me to start over? Or do you want to?
No. In fact, I think you should only spend a minute or two on the roundabout, just a summary. If you heard our explanation, I think that's fine. But if you want to kind of add anything to it that you feel we missed.
So just, can you just go back? Can you just go back to the original, the one from 2018, not that one, the next one? So this, just to give, like, I'm not 100% sure of what was said. We connected when this was on, but if you look at, if you're driving on Main Street, either going east to west or west to east, there's very little deflection in this, this design or this concept. And the concept was trying to fit everything in the right of way, so we weren't taking any right of way acquisitions or anything like that. But at the time, there were some design changes that require more deflection in roundabout. So if you go to the next slide, please. You can see that and Michael explained it, that the entrances to the roundabout, and any of these cases, north, south, east, or west, it pushes the road a little bit and it gives it more deflection for the vehicle entering. So they're entering and they're not making that straight movement. They're actually going around a circle. They're turning a little bit. It's slowing them down. It's creating, if there was a vehicle there and they were to crash, it's not an abrupt, like a T-bone, like you'd have at a traffic signal. It's more of a side swipe type of crash. It's not anywhere near like you'd have at a signal. But what it does is, like, this deflection, it really slows down the vehicles, so you don't, it really provides some safety to it. But at the same time, this deflection, it takes out 27 parking spaces. There's going to be impacts to the fountain, to the monuments that are in the islands. You still have to fit in shared use paths for the bicycles. There's property impacts on 1, 2, 3 of the 4 corners. So, it does provide a little bit more safety, but it has a lot of impacts. Like I said, to the parking, to 3 of the 4, properties that are surrounding it. So if we can go back, I just wanted to hit on a few of those.
Forward.
A few of those points in the corner there. So now we're at if we can go back to the preferred striping, interim striping plan that was put in place in 2020. So this is what's in the field today. It's at the intersection now. You have some island striping that pushes the islands out into the intersection, narrowing down that wide, expansive amount of pavement there. So it provides bicycle lanes going through the intersection, and then there's an island there for vehicles to maneuver around, so they're not making these abrupt turns, saying from heading northbound on South Street and you're making a left. You can't really cut across the whole intersection now. If you're following the pavement markings, you're going to come up, you're going to make a slower turn, and then you're going to head westerly down Main Street, or vice versa on Pine Street, or going to Main Street to Pine, or Main Street to South Street. So it really next down the intersection, and it tries to channelize the vehicles making their left or their right turns. If you go to the next slide. These are just pictures of what's in the field today, just demonstrating what's out there from our plan. What's nice is you have a bicyclist actually using the bike lane. That's good to see. And it just shows you how in each of the pictures, how the intersection itself is kind of compacted a little bit. So there's not that, that large width of pavement for vehicles to go in any direction. Next slide. So the preferred improvements for the current project is there's the intersection improvements that we'll go over. And there's also a grant project where we're going to be moving a crosswalk. We're going to be removing a crosswalk. We're going to be moving a crosswalk, and then we're going to raise a crosswalk. So it's a raised crosswalk, almost like it's going to slow down traffic. It's a speed hump. That'll be in front of the town hall. Next slide. So the intersection traffic calming, that's, at the project area at the intersection, there's, we're going to narrow the pavement. We're going to extend the curb. We're going to replace the interim painted islands with a mountable decorative pavement. We're going to reconstruct the crosswalks and pedestrian ramps. We're going to provide bicycle lanes, and we're going to include conduit and handholds for if we want to do some decorative lighting in the future. Next slide. This is just the final design plans where you can see here, here's your island. We're actually extending it out a little bit further. That is the mountable pavement. Your island is also mountable, and then on the south side, we're extending the mountable area there as well, and a little of the actual islands in each case. There's going to be pedestrian crossings at all 4 approaches now. We're going to update the ramps, and we're going to provide bike lanes as well. Next slide. So, like the grant, shared street grants project, it's going to go out to bid this year for construction in the spring. We're going to shift the crosswalk at Elm Street, move it out of the driveway, shift the ramps, and shifting it west and reconstructing the ped ramps. We're going to update the crosswalks at Town Hall, as I mentioned, to construct a raised crosswalk and reconstruct the ped ramps so they're ADA accessible. And we're going to remove and eliminate the crosswalk that's to the left, that's in between Elm Street and Pine and South Streets. Next slide. So the reason why we're doing some of this, you can see in the photos in the top left, it's Main Street. This is the crosswalk that's being removed, that's east of Pine Street. The crosswalk is entering a driveway on both sides. There's no ADA accessible ramps here. There's a crosswalk at Elm Street, and there's a crosswalk at South and Pine Street. This, in order to put this crosswalk back, you'd lose quite a few parking spaces. One, because you'd have to build ramps and you'd have to shift it over. You'd also lose the tree that's shown in the top left corner. And then because you're moving the crosswalk, then you need to provide 20 feet on each side of the crosswalk for to provide drivers vision of who's trying to cross the road. So if it doesn't, you can't just move the parking spaces that the crosswalk's going to take out, you're going to remove quite a few spots. on Main Street, on the top right corner, Elm Street, the existing crosswalk, again, is heading into a driveway. We're gonna shift that to the west. We're gonna provide ADA accessible ramps on both sides. And then the lower left-hand corner of Main Street, the existing crosswalk, we're gonna make it a raised crosswalk, and we're gonna update the ramps to be ADA accessible. Next slide. And then this is just the drawing that we provided. That's where we're gonna, raise the crosswalk, as I said, in front of the town hall, and we're gonna shift it over at Elm Street. It is gonna impact some of the parking spaces there, but overall, you're gonna have a safer crossing for anyone who needs the ADA accessibility. Next slide. So this is a rendering of the preferred improvements on an aerial. It shows some landscaping that can be done at the intersection. It shows the mountable surfaces, the new crosswalk on the west side of South and Pine. Shows a removal of the crosswalk in between Pine and Elm. The new crosswalk that was shifted to the west on Elm Street, and in front of the town hall, the raised crosswalk. Next slide. So it went rather quickly, but this just shows you how going from the existing condition to the proposed condition, what it's going to look like. It's really not going to impact the overall area. It's going to dress it up a little bit. It's going to, you could see how that corridor is less pavement now, and it's, it really can help calm the traffic driving through there. And it fits the area. Next slide. So just to go over some anticipated project construction costs, the preferred intersection improvements at Main Street and South and Pine is roughly $550,000. The crosswalk improvement at Main Street, which the town has received a grant for $135,000, is roughly $175,000 in construction costs. In 5 years, the intersection of South and Pine Street at Main Street, it's going to have to, it needs regular required maintenance. 5 years from now, that will cost $150,000. So there's, the preferred option compared to the maintenance is, there's additional $400,000 rather than it being $550,000, because you're going to have to update this intersection in, like I said, 5 years. And then a roundabout in this area is roughly around $3 million to construct, but that doesn't include property takings, reconstruction of the fountain or other hardscape improvements. And you still, you're going to have to relocate some of the parking.
Just before you move on, just to be clear, the 150 is the cost to do nothing, because the street needs to be paved in the next 5 years. So
yes, correct. That's like, you're not
right. It's not an addition to the 550.
Yeah, that's going to need to happen anyways.
Right.
Next slide. So the next steps, we're going to prepare bid documents for the shared street grant crosswalks, advertise that project. Hopefully we'll move forward with a public information meeting in the fall, that's this meeting, but to vote on it. We're hoping to receive some feedback on tonight's information meeting. There's going to be a handout that's being provided at the meeting tonight. And then, like I said, there's the maintenance is $150,000 in 5 years. The preferred option is $550,000, and the roundabout's $3 million. we're hoping that we'll be able to evaluate the feedback and then pursue funding and approval at the next town meeting.
All right.
All right. So at this point, I do believe that folks should come up and speak at the podium. Introduce yourself or raise your hand on Zoom. Give your name, and you don't have to give your address, but that's fine.
Yeah, you gotta give the
Yes.
address.
Well, some women don't, or some people don't like to do that always, but you're supposed to give your address, but you're not required.
Patrick, can you take the presentation down?
Pardon me?
Can you take the presentation down, please, so the people on Zoom can see the room?
Sure.
Gonna try to do a Shazam, but my timing was off.
I can throw it back up if.
All right, great. So, hi, Mark Mills from Stockbridge.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the presentation. Mark Mills, 15 Cherry Street. It looked really nice, and I think it looks like it would solve some problems. And I know these crosswalks can't end in people's driveways, so that's always been a little odd. It does look like the distance now between having a crosswalk at Elm Street and then nothing until you get down to Main Street looks like a long haul, by taking out that one that's sort of at the general store. And I wonder if that will encourage more jaywalking as people want to get across to Lost Lamb or whatever. So I don't know what the engineers think about how far you can go between crosswalks before people start just walking out into the middle of the street. So that was one thought. And the other is, I can see the complications of the $3 million roundabout, especially with all those land takings. And it's too bad in a way, because I don't think what I've seen tonight will address the fundamental confusion there is at the intersection of having 3 stop signs and one that goes through. And, we don't have to say much about that. Everybody knows what that's all about. So I feel like we've done this, but without addressing that elephant in the room. So those are just my 2 observations.
Van, do you want to comment on that?
So the distance with the crosswalks, we are removing one, but we're, it is engineering judgment. It's not a terribly long distance between the 2 crosswalks. They are at intersections. You do have parking along in between Elm Street and South and Pine. So your sight lines of vehicles backing up and pulling in will impact, pedestrians crossing at the location that we are removing. I don't think it's going to have an overall impact of pedestrians crossing at, on their own jaywalking. It's not that far of a distance. There are stores on one side, and you have vehicles that are going to be parked on both sides, but it's not that big of a distance where you have 2 crosswalks in that area. For the intersection itself with the roundabout, the roundabouts are costly, and it's going to impact quite a few things. It's going to impact the parking in that area. It's, you still have to provide some sort of shared use path around the crosswalks for the bicyclists. You don't really want them entering a roundabout. You want them to, utilize the shared use path around it. So that's even wider, and it does create some impact. It does have a lot of impacts in that area. There's 3 of the 4 corners, as mentioned, will be impacted.
We did discuss that, removing the sidewalk at the last time we had this meeting. And we talked about removing it, and we find that it's necessary to put it back. We lose parking spots and stuff, but we could put one back in the future. So a good trial to see how it works without it. And if we end up needing it, you're gonna lose quite a few parking spots, but if we just, town decides we need it, we always add that crosswalk back
And
at a later
trees.
date.
We'll lose.
And trees, yes. So I think it's a good experiment to do it without it, and then if you do need it, we could always add it
Can I,
down the road.
can I ask a follow-up question? Are we legally mandated, if we embark on the rest of this project, to remove the crosswalk in question? Is there some condition, for example, for the shared streets grant or anything else that I recognize that it's problematic because of the issue of going into the driveways. At the same time, again, it's been there that way for, decades. Are we mandated to remove that, or can we just simply do the rest of the project and leave that there?
Like it was mentioned earlier, it's entering a driveway. So it's not really ADA accessible. You could leave it there as it is today. It's not
They're reliable.
but it's just not, ADA accessible. You really, like if someone in a wheelchair wanted to utilize that, it's not up to code.
And
You
Michael,
have the outside risk that we are now aware that we have a crosswalk that engineers have identified as a crosswalk that is not correctly installed
right.
where it needs to be, because if there was a car entering or exiting that driveway and somebody was hit within the crosswalk, you're not allowed to have a crosswalk that way. So once again, it's a risk versus reward sort of thing. I can check with our insurance company too, because once we're made aware of a default in something that we have, now we can be outside of being covered, and I'd hate to expose the town to some type of loss.
Well, that's frankly why I asked the question, Michael, for that answer, because we've had that discussion. Yes. All right. Fred, yes.
Good evening. I'm Fred Ruppert. I live 15 Main Street. And I'm sorry that I haven't been here for other discussions on this matter. And just before we begin, make it very clear, I'm here personally and have nothing to do with the Berkshire Eagle. And I strongly urge you to reconsider the roundabout. The proposed changes, I find it almost newspeak when you say we're a calming effect. That intersection is anything but a calming effect when you come driving through it. Now, I've lived over there for 40 years, so I've got a pretty good experience going through that intersection. And there are 4 streets that come into it, you all know that. And when you get to those streets, you got 3 choices. You can go straight, you can turn left, you can turn right. So there are 12 options the drivers face coming into that intersection. Now, turning right on all 4 of them is not a problem. Going straight through, if you're coming down Route 7 south and you're coming up Main Street from the town hall to the red line, you got the right of way. So going straight through or going left there is not a problem. The other 6 alternatives are frightening, literally frightening. And what it does is encourages people to drive aggressively or to take chances because the options are so difficult. And I'm particularly troubled by the idea of removing the crosswalk in front of the country store where my office was for 10 years or so. Why? Well, first of all, what Mark just said, people are going to use no matter what, and it's just going to encourage jaywalking. But also, anyone who's been around here for a while knows that when people cross on that crosswalk, it stops the traffic going south on Route 7. It gives opportunity for people coming either north on 7, west on 102, or across coming down from Prospect Hill to get through the intersection. You just eliminated that possibility. Clearly, our traffic engineers have their job, their best interests at heart, but they haven't been here. They haven't hung around and actually watched how things work. And if we're going to if we want to try to establish some calm, let people all turn right when they get to the intersection. And I strongly urge you to reconsider it. And if some of these alternatives don't meet DOT requirements. Well, let's go to the politicians and see if we can get some kind of a variance or an exclusion. I mean, that red line corner is famous. It's been that way for, it's been known throughout. And these quote unquote improvements are not improvements. They are not improvements. They're going to make, they're window dressing and at best, they're not going to change, they're certainly not going to calm traffic. They're not going to move traffic. When the problem, as we all know, is that the people have the right of way coming down 7. They have the right of way, but they don't know they have the right of way. If we know, because we live here, but tourists don't know that. And you get to the corner and you see they're stopped, they're looking both ways. And then I'm coming up from my house and do I dart out ahead of them because by the time they figure it out, I'll get through? No, I mean, how many thousand times have I gone through that intersection? I'm not blowing smoke here. If you're going to take time, and you have taken time, you're going to take this effort, I beseech you to do it to fix the problem, not a window dressing. And I don't mean to disparage the experts or the board, or anybody else in this. It doesn't get nearly to the issue. It's a big issue. And the truth, the other thing is, they just installed a roundabout in Barrington. Let's live with it for a while and see how people adjust to it. Because I think that, it takes a little while. It's what's happening in the world. Clearly, it's better ecologically. You're burning less fuel. People don't stop. I mean, so there's some advantages. Why don't we take a little more time and see if we can actually have a solution rather than just some window dressing? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fred.
I don't want to touch the traffic circle. But
Joanne, just give your name.
I'm Joanne Conrad. I live at 5 Pine Street, which is Heaton Court. So I'm very familiar with that intersection too. And what I'd like to speak to is the 4th brand new crosswalk that I think is going to add, if we ignore Fred and go on with the plan at hand, I think that is adding another element of confusion in an already very busy intersection. I don't feel it's needed to get from the north side of Main Street to the south side of Main Street, because we've got 3 very useful crosswalks already. And to put that other one is going to put, more confusion to newcomers. And I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. Besides which, there is no sidewalk on the southwest side of the street. So what are you accomplishing? Once they get over there, unless they're going to walk on other people's property, they're going to still have to cross over to the Red Lion Inn to go south if they want to walk on a sidewalk. So that's my take on that. And I think we could eliminate the expense and also avoid a lot more confusion at a very busy intersection. So thanks for considering it.
Tom Lavelle, come up.
I would just like to ask if in the course of this study, anybody has looked at what the impact would be if the new stop sign at the southwest corner of the intersection of the Red Lion intersection, which was put up maybe 10 something years ago. My impression is before that, there was not all of this traffic confusion. People coming south on Route 7 Main Street don't know that they can proceed without stopping, so they back up. I'm aware of the fact that at certain busy times of the year, we always used to have a policeman out there directing traffic on a very busy Tanglewood weekend or Mercy Sunday weekend or whatever. But my solution to this whole thing would be to take down that stop sign and see what happens.
Oh, am I ready to go?
Paul Sundberg, by the way. And Tom Lavelle, you're up.
Sure. My name's Tom LaBelle. I live at 39 Church Street. One thing that has often occurred to me with regard to this whole project is, and it's kind of borne out by what I've heard here tonight, is the people in this town know this issue so well. How many people here have driven through that intersection 5,000 times? Everywhere, right? Or more. Maybe 10,000, 15,000. And yet, and no disrespect to the traffic engineers, but we hire people who, take a walk through or something, but we know that intersection in all weathers, all seasons. And I don't know why the selectmen don't appoint like a 10-person board to, come up with their own ideas. I think it could be very creative. I've heard a lot of things tonight that should be considered. My second point, and then I'll sit down, is that area on Main Street is a registered historic district. And in order to use state money, anytime you get a license, a permit, or funding from the state, and it's a registered historic district, and I did verify that with the MHC in Boston, you need to get a Mass Historical Commission review. And I don't know if that's been done yet.
That would be done during the final, when you put your application, do the work DOT approval, part of it is a sign off from Mass.
From Mass Historical, and I didn't know whether our local historical commission has been consulted or even our planning board, because this really does affect the whole face of the town, really, in part. And I think the planning board should be consulted as well.
And Kate, I think you had mentioned you were thinking of putting this on your agenda for next week or soon?
This is Kate Fletcher speaking, and yes, I am thinking about putting this on the agenda for planning board input. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Shelby Marshall has his hand up.
Shelby. John, we can't hear you.
Thanks. Shelby Marshall. I live on Cherry Hill Road. The benefits of a roundabout, which I understand we cannot have a roundabout, but what the things that a roundabout does for us are they make you yield to whoever's on your left, and they make all the traffic go in one direction. And that's what makes it safe. So what I'm wondering is if there's anything that can be done with signage, yield signs, something that would basically impose the kind of traffic flow on this intersection that we would have had if we had a roundabout. So that's it.
Thanks, Shelby. More comments? Ron Berker, yes.
Okay. Ron Broker, Old Tree Farm Road. I don't have to go through the center of town every time I go somewhere, but it doesn't get me to town going any other way. So there's an observation I just had a couple weeks ago. On the original painted traffic pattern right in front of the cat and dog fountain, there's 4 diagonal lines, and they use that for parking.
Yeah, so go back into it.
All right, unless you change that, they're gonna be parking there all the time. I saw a policeman in town and informed him that we now had more parking than normal, but, couldn't find the people that owned the car. The little painted island that's there, and the paint's mostly worn off because people have driven over it. How about painted arrows in the road? A big arrow for straight and arrow for a left turn coming from the east to the west. That would, rather than construct something, you paint something. Maybe it wears out. If it wears out, it's not painted in the right place.
The island was painted, but you could drive over paint.
Yeah.
If you put the bump there, you gotta go straight and make your turn.
All right,
So
the crosswalks that are gonna be raised, that's similar to what's in Lennox already.
yes,
there's a hill to go up to the crosswalk and then you go down. Doesn't bother me in the car, but the guys plowing snow are not gonna really love that one. And the lack of that center crosswalk from the general store to the Lost Lamb, that's probably the busiest crosswalk in town. And you're gonna do away with it. That's not the best. It's like putting a path from one building to another. You wait till the grass is all worn out and then you put the blacktop where the path was instead of vice versa. And that's gonna be you skip it now, you do it later. Put it all in together in one package.
That involves moving it, losing parking spots, losing trees.
Now he got me. If you have a worry with parking places in the center of town, put a 2-hour limit on the parking and then the cars that are there at 8 o'clock in the morning aren't still in the same exact spot at 5 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
You'll gain 50 to 60 parking places just by doing the whole main street. And when I drive by your house, I start counting cars, Judge, and there's a lot of cars that are there all day long.
Start selling spaces.
You get the cones like South Boston, right?
So if you lose a couple parking places, I don't know who's going to complain unless they have to park in their front of their store or office or whatever for someplace else for the 8 hours they're there.
How many parking spots do we lose if you move that sidewalk over, the center sidewalk?
At least 3 on each side.
What's that?
And here.
At least 3 on each side.
So
6.
It's 12.
12, yeah.
And trees.
And how many trees?
I believe 1.
Okay.
You can replant a tree.
You gotta look into the whole picture. I mean, we move it, that's what's gonna happen.
But,
Fine.
yeah, we plant one somewhere else. We just took one down, the elm tree.
Yeah, the Dutch elm. Is that Dutch elm, that tree that we're talking about? I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Pat, do you want to come up and say something else?
Okay. Set it.
And you're watching the Zoom hands?
I'm watching Bruce's.
Pat Flynn, 27 Park Street. I think there was a comment about there wasn't a sidewalk. There is a sidewalk on both sides of South Street.
And
all the way
West
down.
Street.
So, yeah.
In front of,
There is.
yeah,
Yeah, there
It's
is.
not very nice.
okay, okay.
Yes. There's a sidewalk on both sides of South Street, yeah.
Yes.
And if the main, if that crosswalk to what I'm going to call Minkler's is shifted, wouldn't there only be a loss of 3 parking spots on one side? Because the other side would be the driveway. Like it is.
Exit in the driveway.
It's not a driveway. Everybody drives through it.
Still a driveway.
But it goes into a driveway at St. Paul's Church.
Yes, I know, but like when they moved the diagram, at least that I saw, when they moved the Elm Street sidewalk, it looked like there was only a loss of cars on one side because the other side was still the driveway.
And that's what Van said, is the other side would be the driveway. You use 3 and then 3 on the other end because this crosswalk needs to be parallel.
So it wouldn't be 6 on each side?
No, 6 altogether.
On each
3 on each side.
3 on each side, okay. I just want to make some comments about my experience in going through that main intersection at the Red Lion. Since they did the restriping in anticipation of doing the final, taking the 3 parking places away from in front of the Red Lion Inn made all the difference in the world if you are coming up from South Street and making a left-hand turn, because you could then proceed out with the hash marks there extending from the cat and dog, and not having the parking in front of the Red Lion, you could really see so much better. I don't agree with taking out the stop sign on the west approach to the intersection. that has been a godsend too, to interrupt the traffic so that people making a left-hand turn coming from the south can at least have an entree. I think the oval that has been painted is effective when you are coming from the east in front of Main Street and then turning left onto South Street. That takes you further into the intersection so that the angle is a more accurate angle. When that oval that was painted is paved with a paver, then I think it's going to be, as shown in one of the photos or the mock-ups, that there will be a difference in color between the blacktop and the pavers so that it's much more apparent. And
it'll be raised.
it's going to be raised so that it will be also much more apparent. Right now,
Yeah, the biggest issue with the intersection, when you're coming west, heading south, they cut that such at an angle.
yes, I was just going to say that.
You follow the paint and you go straight and over, you know that car's going that way, you're going this way, you have time
Yes.
to cross without wondering, is this guy gonna go the right way or is he gonna take a 45 and cut you off? That's the biggest issue with the intersection, is that it's so wide that they make that 45, whatever, crossing, you almost start at the red line in and cut diagonally across.
That's what they do when
That's a major issue with that intersection.
oval, it starts
That raised oval to go straight and you're making more of a 90-degree corner. So that gives everybody coming out more time. And then bringing everything out, you got less travel space. So when you're at the intersection, you got more time and less travel distance to get across the intersection.
Oh, I agree with all of that. And I think with the pavers extending from both triangles and the paver in the oval, I think it's going to be much more apparent to everybody. So those are my comments.
Louise.
Louise Gaucher, 39 Church Street. My questions are about the 25 mile per hour speed limit. Are there crash data available since the 20 mile per hour speed limit was imposed in town? I know the team working on this design looked at data older than that, and I'm wondering about the newer data since the speed limit was reduced.
Is there data from last 3 years? 2 years?
For the last couple of years, my understanding is it's 4 accidents and 3 accidents in the intersection. We've had some years as high as 7 and some years with none. Van, can you speak to what crash data you had?
We don't have any crash data for the new speed limits that she's referring to. But from my recollection, there was, like you said, there was 7 to 9 crashes when we did look at the intersection. It's not, from what I remember, it's not a high crash location. But that also depends on it also depends on how it's reported as well. There's a $1,000 minimum damage, so smaller crashes might have not have been collected, but that's my recollection of the number of crashes at the intersection when it was studied.
But correct me if I'm wrong, we got it posted 20 up this end, but legally it's 25, right?
So legally it's 30 up
30.
until Elm Street, 25, 35 and then 25 for 1.9 miles.
Yeah, so the 20 isn't enforceable. We just passed something.
Which will allow
the
us
last
to have
meeting
it
to
all
allow
close to
us to
25
make it 25, but that's the lowest we can go is 25.
So what's if with all the calming ideas here, what's the target speed limit?
25.
So we're already going slower than 25 miles an hour, right? We're already dropping our speed to 20.
That's fine now.
What? Sorry?
To drop below 25, we have to have a traffic study and then have that traffic study approved by the Commonwealth, I believe.
The Mass DOT would
Yeah.
do a traffic survey, which could put the speed limit. So there was already a traffic study done on that road. The speed limits that were established were 30 and 25. And all we can do is set the road at 25 miles an hour.
And yet we have signs that say it's 20.
Which we actually, at the last meeting of the selectmen, we're gonna be adjusting the signs to 25.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy fix. Well, let's petition somebody because the low speed limit should take care of every problem. And just to pile on, everyone is going to jaywalk without that crosswalk. They already jaywalk. Thank you so much.
We have, Romley, we have Matthew Chase from VHB. Patrick, we have Matthew Chase from VHB.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Matthew? Muted.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Oh, muted again.
That's me.
No, you're good.
Now you're good.
Okay.
Van, you may need to mute.
So, and again, I'm Matt Chase with DHB. I work with Van, and the speed humps for the tabletop or the tables for the crosswalks are usually designed for 15, 20 mile an hour speed. So that will slow traffic down, even though the posted speed limit's 25 in this area. That should also provide gaps in traffic in the intersection. And with the raised features mimicking what's out there today from a striping perspective, I concur with someone had stated that will really deter people from driving over that if they are doing it now. So you should see that there's more opportunities and gaps in traffic for people to turn, to make their movements more slowly and not wanting to go over those raised areas, even though they're mountable for larger trucks. And then adding the crosswalk on the other side, on the I guess that's the westerly side, brings further awareness just to the various conflicts and that stop sign on that approach. I know it's there with a stop bar, may or may not be as visible, but with the crosswalk, I think it will bring more attention to that area as well. And in a downtown area, just locating crosswalks in general, it's a wayfinding. If you have somebody parked directly across the street, they're just going to walk to their car. That's really hard to design for. We try to look for the best opportunity to get crosswalks and wheelchair ramps to work. Like Van said, it's a tough one here because you have your crosswalk going to a driveway and you have to slide it over. And I wanted to comment earlier on the funding. Well, the funding may not be directly tied to that, other than the fact that you're removing it. If you were improving it, yes, you'd have to bring it to a standard. But somebody brought up the great question about the liability of the town of not having a crosswalk meeting a certain standard. And I think that is definitely, not only this location, but town-wide is something that a lot of towns are looking at. A lot of that is these ADA transition plans that communities are looking at to try to bring awareness to handicap accessibility just across the board. So I think the fact that you're considering it, you want it added in later and remove parking, I think it does have quite an impact with the trees, the parking, the driveways. It's tough because you have a lot of different conflicting things going on in here. And from the perspective of the roundabout, and I won't ramble on for too much longer here, but there is a state highway layout to the south there that really plays into the decision-making process. You can bend the rules a little bit, but for a project that you're seeking millions of dollars through the state, you can't break the rules that much. You really have to follow them, especially if you're building in the state highway. So, and the historic district is a great a comment to bring up. If it was a roundabout that was going through here, had that significant impact on the outsides of the intersection, that would definitely be quite the topic and conversation to have. Whereas this, I think, is a simple letter that goes to the historic committees and commission during the final design, and it's brought to attention, it's, roadway improvements working from the curb in or sidewalks in, and not having a tremendous physical impact on other features. So just wanted to add a few things there, and I'll mute myself now.
Bromley Boyd, on for.
Bromley, I'm gonna go to Roxanne first. Roxanne? And Bromley, you're next.
So, heard a few comments. I had to work late, so got on Zoom and thought I'd better come in. I heard the comment that the traffic engineer has not been here, and I just want everyone to know that that's not the case. He's been here any number of times, as well as we did do a DOT traffic survey. I think it was in 2020. It was when Mark Weber was with us. And so we did do a full walkabout. Some signage was changed and added at that point in time to try to make it a little more safe. Specifically, a do not enter right by the Red Lion Inn as you're going south, because some people were going to the left of the island. So an additional sign was put there. An additional sign was also put on the stop sign as you're traveling west on Main Street to say that it's a three-way stop. In other words, oncoming traffic has the right of way. But that being said, a couple other things I wanted to respond to is, number one, it's not a problem plowing in terms of the raised pavement or the tabletop crosswalks, because obviously they plow in Lenox and they already have them. So that is a traffic calming that does slow you down. It's not terribly disruptive when you're driving. I know I work in Lenox and I go over them every time I go to work. So it does slow people down. It is pretty effective. And in terms of a roundabout, basically the decision was made based on the non-feasibility of that in terms of, number one, the cost, the loss of parking spaces that was going to cause. And Van, do you remember how many that was going to be for the roundabout?
27.
27. So it was a huge loss of parking. It was a taking of land, possibly moving monuments. But I think everybody should remember, what is our stock and trade here in Stockbridge? We are a Norman Rockwell town. This is a traditional New England town. We are a tourist destination. And to completely disrupt the look of our Main Street, we will no longer look like those Norman Rockwell paintings. We will not have that same appeal. But that, kind of in addition to the cost involved, the taking of land, the moving of monuments, was enormous. And so we looked at this as a different option. And I agree with Pat that moving those parking spaces from in front of the Red Lion Inn allows for better line of sight when you're entering the intersection from the south. In terms of the ADA compliance, we're moving the one up by Elm Street. We had to shift that away from a driveway, which can be a hazard and certainly a liability to the town. And the same story with the other one that goes from St. Paul's to the Mews. Now, we didn't talk about moving it because basically the rules of the road, the DOT rules and the kind of the standards that are followed, they have some standards in terms of how far apart crosswalks should be and how many should you have. People we know will walk, they'll jaywalk. They always do, walking to their parked car. It's still a possibility to shift that one. And I think it's important that we follow ADA compliance. I think it's extremely important in terms of our potential liability and also for the safety of anyone disabled that's in our town. So there's always that possibility. And that St. Paul's driveway, you got to remember there is a preschool there. So there's a childcare center there. So there are people coming and going out of that driveway in the mornings and whenever they pick up their children later. I don't know when that is anymore. But I think that's a consideration, is something to think about. One comment, and I think Ron made this comment, and we've talked about it before in select board meetings, is the idea of painting arrows to better direct people in terms of, and you can actually paint on the road. 102 west, 7 south. You can actually do that for people that are not from this area and don't know where they're going. So those kinds of arrows can go there. But the idea that the mountable pavers, this is the next step in terms of the plan. We did this initially as a test to paint those lines. And I can speak to the experience because I did talk to Chief Fennelly, I believe it was in May, and got the updated statistics. So what we were averaging before we did this was 7 to 8 fender benders. They're not serious accidents, fender benders a year. Since we installed this, we did the painting and did the test, we went to 3 to 4 on average. The other important thing, and this hasn't changed at all, is that all those accidents, all this time, are basically caused not by that intersection, but by distracted driving. They all get codes. So when they record traffic accidents they respond to, they all get codes. Most of those are distracted driving. And it's just a new cultural phenomenon that we have to deal with. One of the recent ones was for medical reasons. Somebody had a medical episode that caused the accident. But that's typically what's happening here. So I think that moving forward with this project makes sense. I think for the town culturally, our history, maintaining the look of our town, and still making it safer because the test clearly has made it somewhat safer. We haven't had any, I've talked to Chief Fennelly and he says, no, we don't have any lack of traffic. We certainly have just as much traffic as we had in 2018, 2019. So that's basically all I wanted to say. I think it's a smart move to just move forward with this. It's a relatively low-cost solution to what isn't a dire situation. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Bronley, you're next.
Thank you, Patrick. I have a question for the engineer. Northbound tractor trailers come into that intersection, stop at the stop sign. They're going to be in the right-hand lane on this drawing. A 50-foot trailer with another 20-foot cab on them is somewhere in a range of at least 70 to 75 feet maybe. When he makes the right turn, have they figured out how he can stay out of the oncoming traffic and the other? Have they calculated his turn will keep him out of the oncoming traffic east to west on Route 7?
Currently today, they're probably crossing over the stop bar. We did make some minor geometric adjustments to what the intersection was prior to. Can you pull up the plan?
Yep.
I can. If you can go to our plan. So we adjusted this, the southwest corner, a little bit, and we opened this up so they have a little bit more room to swing into the lane going from South Street to Route 7. Can we zoom in a little bit? And we did run truck turning templates over this to see if it would work. So if you could see, like this is a little bit more open than what it was before. It should provide enough room for a WB67 to make that turn. There's a lot of truck traffic out here today. But like, as I said, we did change that curb a little bit to improve that situation. They are running over the actual ramps there are now today. You could see it in the photo.
Yeah, I observed one truck. Actually, I was in that 2018 walk around that Chucky was talking about, and observed one of those logging trucks come up, and he did a smart thing. He pulled over into the left lane to make his turn, and he stayed inside the yellow lines down Main Street. And I just wonder if you should shift that, those lanes a little bit to the left, to the west. Just so they can make that. With a 70 to 75-foot trailer coming up there, I just wonder whether we're still going to see traffic being interrupted because they're out in the other lane.
We'll definitely relook at the lane lists that are out there. That is state highway. In the drawing there, there's a line going across both approach on South Street, Route 7, and then the leaving the intersection, South Street going southbound. There's a line going across, and then that's from that point down, that is state highway. There's a stop bar there as well. We're trying not to impact too much of the state highway or the island. We don't really want to impact the fountain anymore, but we'll look into seeing if we could provide a little bit more space there. But we did look into improving that corner for truck turning.
Thank you.
Keith Raftery.
While that's still up, is there a right-hand turn when you're coming west or coming east from the west on Main Street?
Yeah, but it doesn't look like there will be.
Because there's not one now.
No, there isn't.
Used to be one.
Well, there's room for it. A lot of people do that. They,
Yeah, there's that large shoulder, kind of shoulder area. Yeah, you can kind of just get up on the right side of a car going straight.
There's a straight.
Yeah.
But is there going to be an actual right turn lane like there used to be at one time?
Doesn't look like it.
That's what she's talking about.
I think we're bumping that out.
Yeah.
That gets closed down to a single lane.
That gets calmed by calmed. Yeah.
It's really.
I'm sorry, Keith is next.
Oh, yes, right.
Good evening, Keith Raftery, 40 East Street. To back up what Roxanne said and what Ron was mentioning about signage around there, every one of us uses our GPS, not in Stockbridge because we know where we're going. But we have to look out for people coming from outside that don't know where they're going. Just like we use our GPS, we go to Springfield or Boston. And if we took a picture from our GPS, excuse me, of going into the intersection from Great Barrington, come in from West Stockbridge and stuff, and made our signage to look just like what the GPS is showing you, that would take a lot of confusion out of how you get through that intersection. And even change the green signs up to say Lee, Lennox, West Stockbridge. Their GPSs don't care that they're going to Stockbridge. Their GPS wants to know they're on Route 7, they want to take a right, or they want to take a left to go south, whichever happens to be, to 102. So to make it more to look just like your GPS looks. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Patrick, I wasn't sure if Bromley was done. He still has his hand up.
Oh, Bromley, you got more?
I have a one more quick comment. I was.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was wondering if the engineers might consider changing all the stop signs to yield signs, since almost everyone in town and visitors don't stop, they just yield on the turn. So perhaps we ought to get rid of the stop signs and just help people yield. It'll be more like a rotary. We're already trained for a rotary. So
I think along with that, why don't we just build an underpass,
how about a bypass for the trucks?
Yes.
John Hart.
John Hart.
You're muted, John.
Thanks, Steve.
Here. Couple of things. Number one, Jack Spencer, who we all, well, some of us remember, actually had Ricky Wilcox in the car and came up to the stop sign at Abdalla's corner and went straight through it. Because Jack Spencer really didn't think that stop sign belonged there. Now, Bromley just brought up a point, which I think might be the compromise. I think that stop sign is the cause of a great deal of accidents at
Which
that
stop sign?
intersection, because people who are driving south to turn left on Route 7 kind of look at the people like me across the street coming back from the dump and say, well, what's he doing? You know, and then I sit there and I look at him and I would roll my window down and I wave him by, you know, and I sit there impatiently on a Saturday because I have other things to do. I think the raised yellow oval is a good idea, frankly. I really do. But I think that the stop sign at Judy Abdallah's house should come down. I've always thought it should come down. And that way there is clear traffic going east and west, and the people that are on the Prospect Hill side say, oh, well, we got to wait. People on the Route 7 side going to your right, they've got to wait. And the people coming down Main Street, if you're going through the intersection, they have to wait. And remember, a number of things. One is the amount of traffic that's coming from the west to Main Street is minimal by comparison of the other way around. I'm sure there are exceptions, but I mean, it is really minimal. And I don't know, I've been sitting around this town for 75 some odd years, and I'm just sitting there saying, you know, I've been watching this and watching it and watching it. One other thing, when this came to the attention of the town, I don't know, it was pre-COVID, pre-COVID, there was a shutdown on the Massachusetts Turnpike. And Bob, our chief of police at the time, you know, was all upset about the accidents were happening at that intersection. Well, the reason those accidents were happening was because people were jumping off the turnpike in Lee to bypass whatever was going on the turnpike, which had it closed, and they were getting back on over in Austerlitz or New Lebanon or wherever it is. I think we're not dealing with that crisis anymore. I think we're just dealing with the day-to-day stuff. And to the engineer, you know, I say, you know, I don't know if you can go back to the drawing board, but I'd like to know what happens if you take up that stop sign and put in a yield sign at Judy Abdallah's corner, and maybe do the same. The problem with doing the same, if you're going from Main Street straight ahead, is that the stop sign is way over to the right and it's way over behind parked cars and nobody knows it's there. I don't care whether you're from in town or out of town. Nobody knows that yield sign or that stop sign, if somebody chooses to put one there, is there. Unless you put it out in the middle of the street, which kind of eliminates another parking space. I don't know. My feelings, I have spoken, and that's that.
Thanks, John.
We have Anita.
Anita.
Hi, Patrick. So on the last slide, or maybe it's the next to the last slide, there are only 3 choices. And it seems to me like we need a 4th choice. Lots of people feel that by having a police officer in the intersection directing traffic at certain times of the year, or possibly certain times of the day, that's the best way to avoid the confusion.
Anita, hold on one second. We're going to do a quick straw poll for the people leaving. Do you want to just wait 1 second and we can do that?
Well, Patrick, I hope your straw poll has a 4th choice of other, because I'm hearing other choices. Why not have all the crosswalks raised? I'm not sure why just the one by the town offices is raised. But I think that there needs to be another choice, because people have made some really good suggestions. Police officer in the intersection, and something about those stop signs, and maybe enlarging the little sign that says oncoming traffic does not have to stop. So you definitely, I think, on your polls need a 4th choice.
First of all, we are not putting a police officer in the intersection. That's
why
it's not going to happen. They won't do it. It's safety. It's Not putting the police officer in the intersection is not on the table, putting the police.
Excuse me, but safety for who? If you're
Safety
worried
for the
about.
police officer, it's been discussed over and over again, there will not be a police officer in the intersection. The stop sign that was put on coming west was put years ago, mainly when Tanglewood and stuff was really busy. Because what's happening was the traffic coming west on Main Street had to stop to make the turn while traffic's coming west. And the same with coming up to South. So it backed up traffic really far down South Street and really far on Main Street. When they put the stop sign there, that kind of made the flow more this way, up 7 and down 7 and onto Main Street. And it did improve greatly the flow of traffic on Main Street and South Street. Yeah, it caused some little minor inconvenience on the other side, but that's the reason why the stop sign was put there, to keep Main Street clearer, which it did, and keep South Street clearer, which it did. That's the reason that stop sign was put there. If it's still feasible, I'm not sure, but that was the reason it was put there.
You're talking about the stop sign on Main Street going towards Lee? Is
Yes.
that east?
On the
That's
west
east.
side, on the west side of the intersection.
Okay, cars are traveling east, but they're on the west side of the intersection?
Yes, traveling east.
Okay.
That greatly improved the backup on the Main Street heading west and South Street heading north.
Right, but it made everything else worse. And I was told that that was so that Red Lion didn't have all the trucks waiting and all the traffic idling in front of the hotel. My friend who stayed there said she could have been on the turnpike. There was so much noise from trucks.
That was designed to keep the traffic moving on Main Street and moving on South Street heading north. There was major backups at the time. It would be back up past the firehouse, it would be back up way down South Street.
I think there still are. I honestly think there still are those backups. You know, so I don't think that that was the solution. Anyway, I suggest you have a fourth choice.
Just to note, we did look at raised crosswalks at all of them. There was problematic with Elm Street because of the pitch of the road, that it could create icing in there.
But it is,
This intersection.
it is a raised one.
Proposed for the one in front of.
The one in front of, the one in front of the last one down here.
Right.
By the intersection is raised. We got 2 raised, one in each end.
Right.
Yeah, so the sidewalk going east, west rather, and this side of the intersection is a raised sidewalk. So that's going to slow traffic going into the intersection.
At the Red Lion?
The Red Lion intersection is a raised sidewalk.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Louise, do you want to come back up?
So we've heard a lot about ADA compliance, and I actually don't know what that means in terms of changing the crosswalks from what they are now. What does it involve?
It involves making sure that the crosswalks, A, are designed so people, whether they're blind, and whatever their condition is, so we have to have the plates that have the marks so that a person can identify they're at a crosswalk. And then they can properly cross the crosswalk safely. You can't have any exits or any other way exiting into a crosswalk that's parallel to the crosswalk. So those are the big issues we have with our crosswalks.
You can't have it empty into a driveway.
Okay, so the only difference is not having them, and the only 2 differences are not having them enter into a driveway and having some kind of tactile surface,
Bumps out of it.
a sound, or give somebody a feeling that they're on it when they're on it.
Okay,
My guess is that this- we're talking state and federal regulations. My guess is there's 50 or 60 pages of rules, and we're just summarizing 2 of the important rules that refer to us, but let's not kid ourselves. This is why we spend tens of thousands of dollars on engineers.
Is there an oral component to this? Is there going to be some sound that is made, that has to be made?
If you have a lighted crosswalk nowadays, if you had lights, you would have to put also in the audible sounds. Right now, it's treating everybody the same.
Okay.
When you come to it, because there is no light or when you have a light, you also have to provide an audible signal. But because we don't have a light, we don't have to provide the audible signal.
Thank you so much.
All right, more comments.
We have Kate Fletcher.
Kate Fletcher. Hi, Kate.
Hi, everyone. How are you? My questions are for Van. And Van, my first question is, we've heard a number of people comment on, express concern over the possibility of increased jaywalking in that section on Main Street, the main business block. What about if the crosswalk there, that crosswalk, which is the busiest crosswalk, is removed? It does look like a long stretch now. Does that mean that the speed of traffic is increased?
I just had to unmute. We're proposing a tabletop crosswalk just east of that at Pine and South. So vehicles traveling from the west should be
Wait,
slowing down.
I'm sorry. So I'm talking about that crosswalk that would be removed because
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
it's you know, at a driveway in the Muse, and you're proposing a tabletop crosswalk where?
To the east of that, at the intersection of South and Pine, so that's going to help slow down vehicles traveling westbound.
But that's all the way, I'm talking about between, and the main business block, between Elm Street.
And then east of there, he was talking about the one at Elm Street.
No.
Red
line.
Oh, okay.
There's one on each side of town.
So Van, I'm talking about, so the plans show the removal of the main, of a crosswalk on the main street because of, it hits a driveway. So perhaps if you pull up that schematic, you'll see what I mean. So that stretch between that crosswalk and St. Paul's Church and the Red Lion Inn.
Your original question though is like, if we remove that crosswalk, is it going to increase the speeds? Correct?
If you go to the other schematic, so I think that's the visual that.
I use that crosswalk.
Why is it?
But yeah, that was the question though, Van.
So what I was getting at is on both sides of that crosswalk that's being removed.
Can you go down to page 3, please?
Hey, can you let him answer, please? Thanks.
So
Van?
what I was getting at was that crosswalk is being removed, but on both sides of it, we're providing a raised crosswalk, which is to slow down vehicles traveling through there. So from the west, vehicles coming from the west, going where that crosswalk was, there's going to be a raised crosswalk at Pine and South Street. And then again at the town hall. So those two raised crosswalks there slow down vehicles to 15 to 20 miles per hour. One of the locations from the west is relatively closer than the one that's to the east, but those two raised crosswalks should help out in slowing down traffic through that area.
So they would, I guess my concern is that traffic from the Red Lion Inn and St. Paul's Church within that main block is going to pick up speed in between those two raised crosswalks, precisely where you want people to slow down, because that's where the bulk of the business district is. And I'd be interested to hear your comment on, I realize there are the two raised crosswalks at either end, but in between those is where the bulk of the business district is. And I would think that we would want traffic to slow down precisely in that area.
Relatively short distance for them to pick up speed in between those two raised crosswalks. And with the amount of parking, angled parking throughout this area, and probably seasonal traffic with in the summer months, vehicles, I can't really see picking up speed because one crosswalk's being removed. We're actually taking the crosswalk along Elm Street and we're shifting it to the west. So that's, it's not a big shift, but it is actually getting closer to the Pine Street intersection.
Okay, it's a little bit hard to hear because they're speaking there, but so my comment would be that I think that, yes, there is angled parking, but in my experience that traffic can go at a clip in that area. And I think if there's some way to slow down traffic in that main business block, I realize you've got the raised crosswalks at either end, but I think potentially there's a need still to slow, if there's some way to do that, to slow traffic down, that would be my vote. And then the other question I have is, have you looked at having a stop sign by St. Paul's Church as you're heading south?
That would back it up.
Yeah.
No, that would,
You're referring to,
I'm asking Van, please.
you're referring to eastbound on Main Street.
No, I'm talking westbound on Main Street.
I'm sorry, east approach. So heading westbound, if that was a four-way stop, one of the concerns would be vehicles backing up in between Pine and South and backing up easterly towards Elm Street and further beyond.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with them backing up? I mean, forward.
They do now.
Look, I'll just comment. I was walking down Main Street this weekend and the traffic was all backed up and the fumes get pretty strong. And I think keeping that traffic moving is a good idea. I'm no expert. I'm just saying that I really think that when traffic is stalled there, it's problematic for like our lungs. Anyways, Kate, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I do. And Patrick, I'm here to make my comments. So that's what I'd like to do. So my next question is, I've heard two different answers as to the material at the intersection that would be used as the rough areas or the raised area. And Van, this question is for you. What exactly is that material? Is it a type of stone? Is it a synthetic? And what color is it? I'd like just a little bit more specifics on that mounted surface.
It's concrete. It's a stamped concrete.
Okay, thank you.
There's like a stone pattern or a brick pattern. You can have all sorts of different patterns to it.
And how high up is it?
It's 3 to 6 inches, but it's over a gradual incline.
Okay. And then my final question is, I see you've got the bump outs you show with plantings. What is the depth of the soil in those bump outs?
What we did was we provided areas for planting, and we put in an allowance for the town to come in and do those areas of planting. But typically, loam and seed is 4 inches. It wouldn't be seeded, but it would be 4 inches of loam. But that's like up to the town when they put in, that there's an allowance there for them to come in and do the plantings that they would like to do.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then finally, my comment for the select board is that I have, speaking as a resident, as an individual, I would vote for an incremental approach here. It sounds like there's a grant that has been funded, but I've heard from MassDOT officials that whenever it's a state grant, there are strings attached. And I would be interested to know what's involved with that liability. And I guess I would prefer an approach that is a little bit more incremental and measured. And one step at a time. And I think it makes sense to reduce the area at the intersection such that those are focused, and using those traffic calming techniques. I do support that approach. But the other part, it seems like it doesn't make sense to me to have a raised crosswalk at the town hall where that's the least used of all the crosswalks, and then to remove the busiest crosswalk. I have driven out of the parking lot at St. Paul's, and not unlike the intersection, I guess, I just drove through that intersection last weekend, the height of leaf season, and there was a well-attended funeral service at St. Paul's that we were going to. And yes, there was a lot of, there was some confusion, but what I noticed was people slowed down and sort of looked at one another and made eye contact. And, that there is some of that involved. And it's for me personally, it has not been a problem. I've just found you have to be a little bit patient and wait and to see what the other person is doing.
Hey, on the question of an incremental approach, what one or two aspects of this would you suggest starting with?
I would suggest lessening the amount of space at the main intersection by doing that rough service. Service. I mean, I typically am coming into town from off Pine Street, from Prospect Hill down to Pine Street. And I have been, following the lines. I do notice that no one else is, but, and I just find that, yeah, if you follow those lines, you're forced to take an approach that is safer and keeps you in your lane. So I think potentially that if you can, narrow the wide open space there, it seems reasonable to me that would make a difference.
Okay, thank you.
John Hurt.
Wait, hold on. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jim Finnerty. I live at 15 Ice Glen Road. And I grew up in Stockbridge. I moved away from Stockbridge, but I moved back in 2000. So I've been back here for 22 years. And in the 22 years that I've been back, I have not seen an accident at the intersection, first of all. If I were going to start my career now, I think I'd go in the sidewalk painting business, because this is, I can't believe the numbers that are being thrown around here, really. And, at a time when the town is debating things like, how do we do things to let people stay in their houses, and we're all waiting to get our tax bills with the huge increases. We're talking about spending, $550,000. That's like real money. And I question whether it's needed. I guess I go along with John Biaco's recent letter that, let's just do nothing. But my other thoughts are that I think it's absolutely nuts to think about taking out the sidewalk in the center of town. I mean, that is the most heavily used sidewalk, and you're just going to have incredible jaywalking. And I just can't imagine that anyone that lives here in the town actually thinks that would be a good idea. As far as the rest of the traffic flow goes, to me, the most important thing would seem to be keeping the north-south traffic on Route 7 flowing smoothly. And when you're coming south on Route 7, I find that where they've painted the oval there on the road just doesn't work for me. I think that is forcing people to kind of go straight down and make a sharp left-hand turn. I think if you just had like the dotted lines painted in a nice curve to show people coming south where to go, that would work, because the big problem is people coming south don't know what they're supposed to do. Some are to the right, some are curving to the left. I think if you just had dotted lines there, it would go a long ways towards solving the problem. But anyhow, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Who is up on Zoom next?
John Hurt.
John.
Are we there? Hey.
Hi, Mary.
You're not John.
Hi. I know. I'm the
Hi.
better half. I'm the better half.
Oh, you know that.
So I totally agree with what Jim said. I work.
Wait,
I work
who
in
said?
town. Sorry?
What Jim said?
Jim Finnerty.
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear the name. Sorry.
Yes, sorry. I work in town, and so I am using that crosswalk all the time. And I also jaywalk. I'm sorry to name it, but I do. But if you remove that crosswalk right in the center of town, it will be mayhem. It has to stay there. There's so many people that cross there. They're not going to go down to the fountain, and they're not going to go up to the intersection. They're just not. So it's ridiculous. It's gotta stay.
They're getting rid of the one with the intersection.
But that's, and the intersection. Well,
No.
we need to have
Go with
crosswalks in town.
Okay.
So anyway, that's it.
You know, on another note.
Oh, do tell.
On another note, if you don't mind.
I did.
Two things. One is the, I don't know how many people that are on this screen here have ever sat in the intersection at Elm Street and looked to the left and looked to the right, but you're mostly looking to the left, because if somebody walks out in a crosswalk and you want to turn left or you want to turn right, you got a window. And even if there's a lot of traffic going to the right, usually somebody going south will give you a break. I'm totally in agreement with Mary with regard to the center crosswalk. On a completely different subject, and I'm sorry to bring this to the table, we just came back from a fairly lengthy trip. And one of the things that we saw and experienced while we were there is that coming into towns like Stockbridge, there are signs that say noise sensitive community, turn off Jake brakes. Now, if you don't know what Jake brake is, it's something that uses the exhaust system to shut down the motor or slow it down, and they make a hell of a noise. I'm sure the people staying at the Red Lion Inn have heard quite a few of them. I thought that maybe some representative of our town might talk to Smitty and say, coming over the mountain from West Stockbridge and coming over the mountain from Lee, maybe put one of those signs out on the turnpike. I've actually seen them in the United States as well, but that's another story for another time. Welcome,
Thank you.
Welcome to my new bitch.
All right. Anybody else? Yes, Mark Mills.
On the drawing, on the schematic for the new plan, it looked like the oblong that is now painted, but that will become raised, is longer in the drawing than it is on the painted part of the road. Is it the same length as the existing?
I believe we even shortened it, didn't we?
And we shifted it a few feet.
Shifted it and.
We shifted it a few feet.
Yeah.
And I don't believe we made it any longer than what.
Shifted it west or west?
I believe we shifted it to the west a little bit.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. So I have a question for the two of you. Do you want to discuss this now or think about this and review the tape? Because we had a lot of interesting ideas today, and perhaps have a follow-up on the next meeting or the meeting after that.
I think I'd like to do a follow-up because we've been at it a few hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's going to be our plan. I would personally I took a bunch of notes. There's some really interesting ideas and some opinions. I applaud everyone who participated in this meeting because it's such a really important issue for the town and one that elicits many opinions. And I thought it was a really civil meeting. I really appreciate that. So I think that what I'll plan on doing is is adding to the next agenda while it's still fresh in our head, sort of just a follow-up discussion that'll primarily be the select board. But of course, everyone is welcome to, weigh in.
Do that.
So if people that are here or took a card, if there's any comments you'd like to make and fill those out and get them back. And tomorrow morning, we'll have it
First in the
posted
class.
on the website, so you can download it, bring it in, or you can just come in and we'll have extras here at Town Hall that you can fill out. So we'd love to have people's input.
There are extra credit assignments available if anyone wants one. We are in the second grade classroom here, so, no, I'm kidding.
This was the principal's office.
This was,
Yeah,
oh.
principal's office.
Oh, maybe it was.
A couple times.
Anyways, thank you. I think
Saying my age,
we have a
but yeah, a
motion to
couple
adjourn because
times.
people are leaving.
I make a motion we adjourn.
I'll second.
Saved by the bell.
I have a related comment,
Yes.
not related to these intersections, but the intersection of Maple and South. Is there a reason that that does not have a white striped stop bar line? And it does not have a crosswalk painting green? It's just,
Hey, we'll check with that.
Yeah, let's look at
Maple
that.
and.
Yeah, come and
Yeah.
go down that.
and the light that's there was out for a while.
Yeah, it's state. We'll have to call the state.
And I contacted National Grid and they replaced, but
You.
but that bulb is so dim, it does nothing.
Okay.
So
They're probably trying to save money in electric.
All right, thanks. We had a second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.